Hello and welcome to the Paid Media Lab podcast. My name is James. I'm the content lead here at Lunio, and in this episode, I'll be speaking with Selina Patel, who is the founder of Exposure Media, a PPC consultancy based here in Manchester, working with both e-commerce and lead gen brands. With more than 7 years experience managing campaigns in-house and on the agency side, Selina has worked with both international brands with multi-million-dollar budgets, all the way to small local businesses trying to carve out their own niche across search and social. Selina has a particular interest in Google Shopping and product feed management, and that's why in this conversation, we focus on how to combine standard shopping with Performance Max campaigns to maximize revenue in e-commerce. This topic is particularly relevant at the moment, given Google's update, which deprioritized Performance Max in ad auctions, putting it on a level playing field with standard shopping. So this now means that the campaign with the highest ad rank will serve. And as we get into in this episode, this has some potentially important implications for advertisers and could potentially lead to many moving away from Performance Max and reverting back to standard shopping. So let's get into the conversation with Selina about striking the right balance between Performance Max and standard shopping in e-commerce. Selina, welcome to the Paid Media Lab. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So I know from keeping up with you on LinkedIn, you've been doing some traveling recently. I know you spent a full month living and working in Valencia in Spain and kind of living a kind of part-time digital nomad lifestyle, which I have to say, given that the weather here in Manchester at the moment is quite appealing. How was your time out in Spain recently?
Yeah, it was so good, to be honest. I don't feel like I've fully probably done the whole digital nomad, and I don't think I could do that full time, but just getting away from Manchester and getting a little bit of sun, especially because we didn't really have the best summer, it was quite nice. And yeah, definitely would do it again. I was around so many different freelancers and remote workers. So it was a good way to just network with people and have a slower pace of life than the Manchester life.
Yeah, 100%. So to get on to our main topic for today, we're going to be looking at how you can effectively combine standard shopping with Performance Max campaigns to optimize Google Ads for e-commerce businesses. And with that topic in mind, there was a very notable and relevant announcement from Google on that front recently. So I'm just going to start just by providing some context for people in relation to what that announcement was, and then we'll kind of get into the implications for marketers and advertisers. So Google recently announced that starting in October 2024, PMax is being deprioritized in auctions to be more aligned with standard shopping campaigns. So I just got a quote from Google's documentation here in relation to that rollout. So I'm just going to read that out for people here. So for overlapping campaigns, instead of Performance Max automatically being prioritized over standard shopping campaigns within the same account running the same products, normal auction dynamics will now apply, and the campaign with the highest ad rank will serve. So this brings Performance Max and standard shopping campaigns into alignment with other campaign types where highest ad rank serves is the general behavior. So this is a really big shift from Google, as up until now, PMax always took priority by default. And in a way, it kind of seems a little bit like Google is backtracking possibly here. So first of all, Selina, what was your initial response to seeing this announcement from Google?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it, I was a little bit shocked, to be honest, because I feel like they've always pushed the PMax product on advertisers. So it just feels like they're going back on themselves a bit, and that's obviously going to make people want to adopt standard shopping a lot more. I just don't really know why they're doing this, but I've worked with standard shopping and it's there still for a reason, because it does work well. But I can imagine if it's an even playing field now, that perhaps we're going to be competing against ourselves a little bit more in the auctions between the standard shopping campaign and the Performance Max. So if we're competing against ourselves, that means that CPCs could increase, and that means more money for Google. So I don't know. It's really hard to know how performance is going to change once this actually comes into play. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the early indicators that I think we do have just on that point of how performance is going to be affected. One of the previous guests on the Paid Media Lab, Thomas Etchell, he actually published a mini case study on this, and he was looking at his own data, and he found that started in October 2024, his standard shopping campaign started experiencing a notable auction win increase, leading to a 40% increase in costs on his standard shopping campaigns, even though he didn't alter any of his daily budgets in any way. So are you kind of expecting a similar trend to start cropping up among your clients?
I mean, definitely if I'm running them alongside Performance Max, but CPCs have been increasing year on year, and sometimes Google is increasing them without letting anyone know, and we've seen that across brand. So it's kind of tricky to say whether it's at a certain period of time or whether, it's just going to be a gradual thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to keep an eye on anyway. And
there's loads of reasons though, isn't there, but with CPCs increasing, so it's never easy to kind of pinpoint what it might be, especially in the shopping campaign.
Yeah, 100%. In addition to that, Bob Major from PPC Mastery, he also put up a LinkedIn post which got quite a bit of traction, and he was saying that the main reason he tended to use PMax feed-only campaigns was because they were given the higher priority in auctions by default. But he said in the face of this update, the rationale for that use case has weakened significantly. And he went on to say that the only solid reason I see to choose PMax feed-only over standard shopping is that you might want to expand into other networks in the near future by transitioning to Performance Max full asset. And he said if you don't plan to do that, then standard shopping is the better option right now, as it still gives you that transparency and control over search terms, auction insights, negative keywords. So I can see you nodding there. So would you kind of agree with Bob's assessment of that situation?
I would, exactly, especially because a feed-only campaign is where we are pushing most of the spend. And if it's going to be, like I said, an even play field, it's likely to just see that shift anyway. And I think it's probably a good thing because we do have a lot more transparency on the standard shopping campaign. You know, you get the search term reports, you've got more control at an ad group level. So, Yeah.
So before we move on from that kind of main announcement from Google, are there any other adjustments or bits of advice that you'd give to marketers about how to manage this change?
Yeah, well, I think if you are running Performance Max feed-only campaigns and that has been your strategy over the last few years and you've not necessarily tested standard shopping, I would recommend people giving it a go and seeing how that performs, especially for bigger accounts where you might have like a bigger inventory. I think that I would personally look at standard shopping the way that you used to look at it before Smart Shopping and PMax were around. Start building out a little bit more of a complex structure rather than people might just use it as like a catch-all or to isolate out brand. So yeah, I would do that. And also Niels, I can't say his last name, but he basically specializes in script. He posted about that shopping spend alert script, which I believe is creating at the moment. And I think that will be good for people to implement in their account just to monitor the performance to see how the spend will change. Other than that, that's the main things really. Just try testing and making sure you're on it with checking the spend.
We will find the link to Niels' LinkedIn profile, and we will link that in the show description here so that people can go and follow Niels. And hopefully by the time you're listening to this episode, that script might have already been released, so you can grab yourself a copy of that.
he did say if he gets 100 likes on his LinkedIn profile that he'll create it. So I think he'll likely get 100 likes already on that. So
yeah, that's easy. Small numbers for Niels. There's a big demand for his scripts out there.
Yeah, definitely.
So we will move on from that initial announcement. And so historically, Google have always recommended a consolidated campaign structure for Performance Max in order to get the best results. And in essence, for anyone that might not be aware, this means creating a unified campaign that combines multiple campaigns into one, all with the same goals, bid strategy, and targets. And the rationale from Google being that it keeps all the data in one place and it enables their algorithms to optimize performance across channels more effectively, or that's their claim anyway. But Selina, what are the implications that marketers should keep in mind about this consolidated campaign structure when it comes to trying to make optimizations?
Yeah, like you said, the benefits obviously is the fact that you're giving it more data to learn from. But if you have, say, for example, a campaign with all your products in there, you're just lacking any control over your inventory. And especially for e-commerce businesses, you need to have control over maybe certain product categories or brands. And just having a consolidated structure just means that you're not able to have control over how much you're kind of adjusting your targets for your products. So I think that in terms of what I would recommend is starting with a relatively consolidated structure, but using your data to inform the strategy. So if you had, say, top level category campaigns, but you saw, say, for example, a product or a specific brand serving all the impressions, serving all the traffic and spend, you might want to look at then isolate that into a separate campaign. So then you have more control over the budgets and the targets. So I always say start very top level, and over time just expand it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the points we've already spoken about already, and Bob from PPC Mastery mentioned it, is that, you know, historically the biggest strength of PMax was the fact that it was prioritized in the auction by default. Obviously that has changed now, or will very soon be changing. So aside from that, prioritization in the auction, are there any other strengths or benefits you see PMax offering that make it worth considering?
In terms of, I would probably say, yeah, like you said, instead of it getting prioritized, if you're a small business and you've got a small budget, it has a lot of benefits because it obviously has all of the ad types in one. So you're able to reach that warm traffic through the customer journey at different ad placements. But apart from that, you just lack control over how much you're spending on all of those ad types. But I guess one of the other strengths of it is that you do have the audience signals and you can use your search themes. So you can bake your behavioral data, your first party customer match list and custom intent audiences to try and reach a customer that matches that profile. It doesn't necessarily just target those users. It also uses those signals to try and find other users who might fit that profile. So I would say that's a benefit that we don't necessarily have on like a standard shopping campaign.
Yeah, 100%. So as we said, and kind of you touched on some of your previous answers, one of the main drawbacks with PMax, is the lack of control over that product level and subcategory level products. So for anyone that might be having frustrations with that, about, that lack of control in PMax, what advice or recommendations would you give to them to try and remedy that?
Yeah, I think one of the things with Performance Max is that you don't have control at asset group level. You only have control over your targets at campaign level. and segmenting a campaign more granularly into a new PMax campaign might not be the solution, because you might have limited conversion data, which will then mean that the smart bidding strategies will struggle. So if that's the case, an option is to use standard shopping, and that's where it definitely has loads of loads of strengths to it, I would say. So Google, although they have prioritized standard shopping, I don't personally think it necessarily means that it's better than standard shopping. I've tested running PMax against standard shopping before, and sometimes that outperforms it. And the beauty of it is that you're able to have control over the targets at an ad group level. So say, for example, if you've got a campaign where you don't necessarily want to split it out into a separate campaign, when running on a standard shopping campaign, you have the ability to isolate the products at an ad group level and manipulate the bid strategies to loosen it, to then increase visibility across it. And I've seen that work really successfully across some of my accounts, especially the larger ones with big inventories.
Yeah, and just to come on to that point, I know you actually have a really interesting case study to reference in relation to that. And I know you need to keep the client anonymous, but it was a niche market business with more than 7,000 SKUs, which is a very big number. So could you talk about the challenges that you faced there and the approach that you used to drive better performance for that particular client?
Yeah, so like you said, they had over 7,500 SKUs, but they sold their brand, other brands. They had over 30 top level categories, and within that they had between 1 to 12 sub-level categories. They also ran promotions on a monthly basis across certain products. They might offer gifts, also different brands and different product ranges. So it meant that we needed to have a lot of control over the inventory. And not just that, they stock products in different sizes, and the price range might vary between £50 to £1,000. So in terms of what the client wanted to push on shopping, they wanted to make sure that they had control. And what we kind of found was that we ran a Performance Max campaign for one of the categories, and it was basically just pushing the higher price products, and in the auction insights against all the competitors, our price was so much higher than all of their other competitors. So they wanted to change that, and from looking at their campaigns, their visibility on the lower price points weren't getting anything. So we originally tested separating the campaigns out by price on a Performance Max, and it just did not perform well. So what we did was we started to test standard shopping, and we kept the Performance Max campaign, but we manipulated the bidding strategies by having a looser target on standard shopping, but also having a lower budget on PMax. So that was forcing the rest of the impressions to show on a standard shopping campaign. And what we then did was we separated the products out by price at ad group level and readjusted the target so that it was lower on the lower price points. And what we found over time was it would increase in visibility, and that was just a good way for us to have a little bit more control over the products, but without affecting it from a top level, from a campaign perspective, because like I said, with the PMax, we're just having to isolate it out, and the data was split too granularly. So actually having it all together in a standard shopping and just controlling it at ad group level really helped.
Yeah, that wasn't an easy task when you were running through the situation there. There was a lot of complicated variables that made that a particularly challenging one. But it sounds like you got to the kind of a good result in the end, even though it sounded like a lot of work and trial and error to get there.
Yeah, definitely. And this was a very kind of different account to what I've worked on. So this particular account, we rolled out a lot more standard shopping than other accounts that I've worked on. So it's not a one size fits all model. This worked really well for this particular account, but it's not necessarily going to be the same across another account. So I think it's worth mentioning that too.
Yeah, the classic caveat for all PPC conversations is, well, it depends, and it really does depend. But it's still very interesting to hear kind of the problem that you're facing and the solution that you kind of arrived at. Yeah. So just to close here, based on everything we've covered about PMax and standard shopping today, and the various advantages and disadvantages in each case, are there any closing recommendations or any other bits of advice you'd give to marketers to ensure they're setting themselves up for success when it comes to deciding on when to go with PMax and when to go with standard shopping?
Yeah, I think that don't just look at standard shopping as a bit of a catch-all campaign or to pick up brand. Really look at your inventory and start testing it instead of using Performance Max. Don't be afraid to give that a go, because although Performance Max is getting prioritized now, that's not necessarily going to be the case soon. So play around with your structures, because what might work now might not necessarily be the case. So look at isolating out using your data, but looking at isolating campaigns out in a standard shopping and using your priorities and your targets and negatives to query sculpt a more complex structure on standard shopping as well, because it's there for a reason, isn't it? And it's quite easy to stick with Performance Max, and what people say is you set it, but don't forget about it, because your budget's gonna go. Your budget's a lot of it is gonna go up the wall if you forget it and don't look at what's happening. Yeah, exactly. 100%. And that's the beauty with standard shopping, is that you do have the search term data, and obviously there's a lot of scripts which fill in the gaps with a Performance Max campaign. But I think from a control perspective, it's good to really see how you can utilize standard shopping just as effectively as Performance Max.
Nice. Yeah, that control, Google has been, taking control away it seemed like for quite a while, and advertisers understandably are getting quite frustrated about that. But this new move does signal that, okay, there might be ways to regain some of that control that you might have lost if you did make that transition to PMax. Yeah.
Exactly. I think we will see a lot of people start adopting standard shopping a lot more. So it'll be interesting to see from the optimization score how people's accounts do.
Yeah, we'll wait with bated breath for that one. But just in the interest of time, we're going to leave it there. But I want to say thank you very much, Selina, for joining us. It was definitely a very topically relevant subject to discuss at the moment. For anyone listening, if you aren't already, go and follow Selina on LinkedIn to catch all her latest updates. And before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to mention or let people know about Selina?
I would say people can find me on LinkedIn, but I don't really post as often as I'd like. But yeah, no, not really.
All good. I'll be keeping an eye out anyway for your kind of any working abroad travels that you've got coming up in 2025. I'll be sat here in Manchester, no doubt quite jealous of wherever you happen to end up next year. But thanks again, Selina.
I'll keep everyone posted. Thanks.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Cheers.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of the Paid Media Lab. Thank you for tuning in. If you found it helpful, hit the subscribe button to get the next episode as soon as it's released. Subscribing costs nothing. It only takes a few seconds to do, but it makes a huge difference to us because it enables us to continue booking the best possible guests and delivering you great content. In the meantime, if you're looking for more free guides, tips, and tools, head to lunio.ai and click on the resources tab in the nav bar. And lastly, if you know any other marketers who'd find these strategies helpful, please do tell them about the show, and I'll see you in the next episode.